Good morning, students. In today's class, we'll just go for the what you can say start with the dielectric material, and today's class will be the last class for our unit 2. So we just started with the starting definition, that is what is actually the dielectric material. So we said that dielectric materials are nothing but they are elements or which possess uh, the tight bonded electrons. So we say that they are known as dielectric materials, and these dielectric materials have been classified in two categories: passive dielectrics and active dielectrics. So that actually we'll start with the uh, passive dielectric. So what is actually the meaning of passive dielectric? So passive dialectics deals with the what you can say the dielectric materials which are used for the insulation purpose, and the active dielectrics are the materials which deals with the uh, storage of the electric field, storage of the potential, right? So how we'll just start with the concept of dielectrics, and here the dielectrics are the materials whose um, who the materials which possess actually the electric dipole moment. So we just discussed what is actually dipole. So the two oppositely charges separated by a small distance, we say that that is called a dipole moment. Dipoles, and that is dipole moment. So dipole moment is nothing but, see, the we just start with the polarization concept, where you can understand what is actually the dipole moment is all about. So let us consider a neutral atom. So when we talk about see, when I talking about polarization in dielectrics, so directly I will go for the direct DC field. So here when we talk about a neutral atom, so the neutral atom, how this polarization is working out in a neutral atom. So that actually we are going to learn in today's class. So the polarization concept is actually in dielectrics is given as the a neutral atom which is positive nucleus, which possesses positive nucleus, and also you will have a negative electron. So what will happen when you apply some amount of electric field? So the positive charge will be pushed in the direction of the electric field, and the negative charge will be pushed opposite to the, or what you can say, to the opposite direction of the electric field. Hence we say that the negative and the positive centers doesn't coincide, and the net displacement of this is given by dipole moment, that is we are P is equal to ZE into R. So here we already know that the dipole moment is nothing but P is equal to some Q into R. Q is the charge. So when you talk about a charge, now that is given by ZE into the displacement, that the displacement, net displacement, is considered to be R. So here what we say that from this particular mathematical form of dipole moment, we say that P is equal to ZE into R, and also we say that P is equal to alpha into E. Here alpha is termed as polarizability of the atom or a molecule, right? So now, so what is actually polarization means here? Net dipole moment per unit volume. So actually this is the basic definition that we have already learned. So we just for your reference, again I just repeated what we have done in the last class, right? So now polarization is, what is actually polarization in dielectrics, right? In intermediate we already studied about polarization in light. So in the engineering we are studying about polarization. When I say polarization, it is that it is actually shifting of the electron charge cloud, right? That is called, if the electron charge has been shifted with respect to the positive charge nucleus. So we say that whatever the charge which has been displaced from its mean position, so that such type of displacement, we say that electronic polarization. And if we talk about ions, right, shifting of the positive and the negative ions, we say that ionic polarization. In the last class we just discussed the expression of the electronic polarization, right? So here also just we have just defining what is known as electronic, ionic, and what is actually the orientation polarization. So now the orientation polarization is actually the orientation of dipoles. So this shifting of the ions or the charge with respect to the orientation, when I say orientation, so particular path they are following, so we will say that are nothing but the orientation of the dipoles, and there will be slight change in the dimensions of the material. So right, so we say that this type of polarization which will be occurring in the dielectric material. So now we just have a very clear idea regarding the dielectrics. So dielectrics have been classified into two important categories, and in the later section I will tell you why actually we are studying about dielectrics in engineering. So what is the importance of this dielectrics for engineering students? So dielectrics have been classified into two important categories. So that is called centrosymmetric, there is N is missing there, centrosymmetric and non-centrosymmetric materials, right. So what is actually centrosymmetric and non-centrosymmetric? So the inversion factor here, we cannot inverse that particular crystal, so we say that that is called non-centrosymmetric. If you are able to inverse that particular material, we say that is called centrosymmetric. So now again this, so what is the use of studying this non-centro or centrosymmetric crystal? So just I will explain you right in the later section. So this actually with non-centrosymmetric crystal, they are having numerous application in engineering, and also a layman can easily understand this concept when we just give some examples which he will be using, how he is using this technology in his daily life. So in the later section I will discuss regarding the applications, right. So non-centrosymmetric crystals are exhibiting this type of what you can say the phenomena that is called piezoelectric. So we say that we are studying about the non-centrosymmetric type of elements. So these non-centros type of elements again classified into non-pyroelectrics and pyroelectrics. Again these pyroelectrics have been sub-classified into non-ferroelectrics and ferroelectrics. So we need to understand, see this, due to this numerous application, we need to study about the ferroelectrics, right. So I just this is a hierarchical look of the dielectrics, actually what are dielectrics and how these dielectrics have been classified, and we are giving our due importance to the ferroelectrics because of its numerous application. You can just see this is ferroelectrics, so we need to study about the ferroelectrics. So now this is actually the scientist who has been discovered this piezo. Word piezo means actually the pressure or pressingness. When we press it, we say that in Greek that is called piezo, right. So the piezoelectric effect, why we are studying about this is because this comes under the category of non-centrosymmetric elements, and ferroelectrics will also come under the non-centrosymmetric element. So now the first piezoelectric effect was discovered in 1880 by the two brothers, that is P. Ray and Jacques Curie. So this is the history that you need to just remember, that regarding the piezoelectric crystal. So now we are just directly going to our what you can say, just a minute, right. We just start with our introduction with the ferroelectrics, right. So we are just going for ferroelectrics, right. So now the what is actually, see now you understood the hierarchical basic divisions of the non-centrosymmetric crystals, that is ferroelectricity. So all the ferroelectric material exhibit the piezoelectric effect. So piezo is when you apply some amount of pressure, so definitely there will be electricity will be produced. That is that effect is known as piezoelectric effect. So all the ferroelectric material can exhibit the piezoelectric effect because of its non-centrosymmetric crystal. So that is called lack of symmetry, right. Lack of similar aspect or similar property, that is called lack of symmetry, right. So now this special class of piezoelectric exhibit certain other properties also. Now the ferroelectrics exhibit spontaneous polarization. What is the meaning of this spontaneous polarization? Means the polarization of the charges in the absence of the electric field. For example, if you got a ferroelectric material, so in the ferroelectric material you find that the polarization of charges are taking place in the absence of the electric field. No external electric field is applied to this material. So we say that in the absence of the electric field, the polarization of charges are taking place. So we say that this is come under the category of the spontaneous polarization, and this spontaneous polarization is exhibited especially by the ferroelectric material. So ferroelectric materials are actually what you can say used for ferromagnets, which may display the permanent magnetic behavior. So now this is a special property of ferroelectric. Now this ferroelectric is actually discovered by the scientist Wallace K, right? And the ferroelectric material example is Rochella salt. So now we say that in ferroelectric material, see, the polarization can be changed if you just reverse the polarity or external electric field. So what are the important properties of the ferroelectricity? You can just see spontaneous polarization in the absence of applied field, and very high dielectric constant is present. So this what is the meaning of this dielectric constant? And we just discussed in the last class what is that actually dielectric constant mean. The how much the material can resist the flow of charges. So we can say that the mathematical phenomena with epsilon r, right, is equal to epsilon by epsilon naught. So we say that is called dielectric constant. So this is the characteristic of the dielectric material, which will signifies the storage capacity of that particular storage of the potential, right. So how much extremely high dielectric constant means it can store more amount of potential, right. And there is a strong nonlinear dielectric response to an external electric field. Now I will show you what is this actually means, right. So if you apply very high strain to the applied electric field, so that is called your piezoelectricity. So same when you talk about ferroelectric material, it will exhibit piezoelectricity, and also it come under the category of pyroelectricity, which is not there in your syllabus, but still for this will actually come under this particular two important categories. So now we just go for the next important aspect. What will happen to the polarization of charges with respect to the electric field? Now we just discussed that when you don't apply the electric field, how the polarization of charges are taking place. Now in this particular session, we'll just discuss what will happen to the polarization of charges when you apply the external electric field. So now if you apply a small electric field to the ferroelectric material, right, so it does so what will happen, the domains, what is actually domains are nothing but the dipoles which are actually existing in the magnetic material. So right, so to switch domain alignment, then the material will behave as a normal dielectric. We say that polarization is actually directly proportional to the electric field. Now as you increase the electric field, right, we start to then definitely what will happen is that domains will be, right, the starting movement, right, and rapidly the polarization aspect is increasing. So what it means, P is directly proportional to E. The polarization is directly dependent on the electric field. So what is when all the domains are been active, switched means it is active, and at a particular instant it will reach to the saturation position. Now that I will show you with the figure, right. So now this is the type of semantic graph which will be occurring inside the ferroelectric material. You can just see this particular graph, right. When you apply the, see, first of all what we have taken on the x-axis, see, on the x-axis we have taken an electric field, and the y-axis we are having a polarization. So that is kilowatt per electric field is measured in terms of kilovolt per centimeter, and here polarization is microcoulomb, right, per centimeter square, right. So now what we are doing is that as you increase the electric field, you can just see, so the polarization is slowly increasing. You can just see this figure, right. Polarization is increasing, and it is reaching to the saturation position. Now what will happen is that when you just switched off the electric field, again actually what should happen, this particular graph should come to this particular origin, right. It will again it should retrace its original position, but it is not happening. Now here you can just see that when you just switch off the electric field, what will happen, it is taking the another path. You can just see here, it is taking another path, right. So now this is the path which has been followed with the conventional path, right. This is not becoming coming to its origin. So now it is taking another different path. Slowly this particular aspect we can just trace this out. So you get this type of figure here. You can just see that this is called hysteresis, the lagging of the electric field with the applied the external electric field. Now this is the case. So what we say that the exactly when the electric field is 0, when you don't apply electric field, so we'll call that electric field will is remnant polarization. The value of P, which is from coming back to the from the saturation limit, we'll say that is called spontaneous polarization. So when you reverse the field to remove the polarization, you can say there is some amount of polarization is there. You can just see that some amount of polarization is exhibited. So this in order to remove this polarization, what we are doing that we are applying some extra, see we are applying reverse electric field. So when you apply reverse electric field, we call such electric field as coercive field. We said this is called coercive, and the field which is possessed, even you just electric field is removed completely. So the field which is possessed, the type of polarization when the electric field is 0, we say that is called remnant polarization. And when you apply, if there is any polarization in the figure, you can just see this, there is a polarization here. It is not following this path, right? So it is following this path. So this is called, we say that is called a coercive field, right? Now this is called the reversal of the electric field with eventually removing the polarization. We say that is called coercive field. Further, if you increase that reverse field, the completely reverse polarization is occurring, and you get you call this the, if I increase this, again it is taking this particular path. Again it is reaching to saturation position in the reverse direction, and this is for this particular path will be followed, and we say that this path which has been followed by this ferroelectric material, this is called hysteresis loop. We'll just say that is called hysteresis loop. So it is very clearly given in the notes also. So see, if you don't follow this particular thing in this particular figure also, when you come to the offline class, definitely we'll again discuss this particular aspect, right? If it is not clear to you, I definitely will discuss the offline class also the same manner, right? So now this is called, now you just had information that when I don't apply any electric field, if then the electric field is 0, so whatever the polarization which is remain in the material, we say that is called remnant polarization. And when you want to remove that polarization which is already existing, see remnant polarization is existing, I am telling you. So if I want to remove this type of remnant polarization, I have to apply the field in the reverse direction. So that particular field which is applied in the reverse direction, I say that is called coercive field. You got my point? So that is called coercive field. So now, so this coercive field, due to this reverse field, right? So again it will follow a particular path. You can see the figure again, this particular paths are followed, and this particular loop will say that is called hysteresis loop, right? So now this is about the polarization of the charges, or when you apply the electric field to a ferroelectric material, you will get this type of loop, right? And this is what we are actually interested in applications. Now, what is the need of studying this ferroelectric material, right? I just now told you that hysteresis loop has been, you can just see, we have seen the hysteresis loop, that we don't apply the electric field also, there exists some polarization in that particular material, and we say that particular polarization is spontaneous polarization. Okay, so we just studied some theoretical concept there, and these theoretical concept, how it can be utilized in the present study. So, and in the present scenario, we say that there are different applications of this ferroelectricity, not only to the engineering aspect, but also to a given layman. So what are the important applications? The RAMs, non-volatile, we say that non-volatile RAMs, right? Not only the random access memory, I am talking about non-volatile RAMs and dynamic capacitors, microwave devices, and optical waveguides, piezoelectric detectors, and sensors has been important applications of this. How you can tell you this is what is actually, just now we just discussed the first important application of the ferroelectric, that is called non-volatile RAM. So I will just discuss what is the use of this of non-volatile. So here you can just see that here you use now you'll understand why actually we are studying about these ferroelectrics. The two possible orientation in this material, you can just see very important aspect, that computer memory will only store either 0 or 1, right? Everybody is aware of this computer memory, that it can store only ones and zeros. So now So just keep in mind that computer memory is storing ones and zeros. So now what is actually non-volatile RAM? So these materials could help the important to locate that cloud computing. It is used for computing. Your Facebook, Google or web-based emails and other services are stored in the cloud, and they are completely reliable on the volatile memory. So by using the volatile memory only, you are whatever you are using now, Google, Facebook, right, your WhatsApp, right, it's completely dependent upon the volatile memory concept. And this volatile memory is possible by using the ferroelectric material. So now I think that you got a very clear idea actually why actually we are studying about this ferroelectric, because of its very numerous application, and one only I've just told you only one application regarding the ferroelectric material. The non-volatile memory has been used, right, for your Facebook, Google and all the emails that you will use for, right, with respect to the web. So this is stored on the basis of volatile memory. So with this type of memory, if the power is tuned, and even if something happened, right, if power has been turned off, so what will happen? Volatile memory is what? So what is the use of that volatile memory? So if the power has been turned off, what will happen? These, by using this non-volatile memory, your information which you have stored before the power which has been switched off, so it will remain in the same way when the power will be on. So now by using this non-volatile memory, when you take an example for US, it can just save some $6 billion, right, dollars for electricity costs, right. So we do need not to use electricity, right. If your power has been switched off also, by using this volatile memory, we can just save our information, right. Now this is the aspect, and how this volatile memory, you can say smart cards which has been used for electric memories, right. Use this is whatever the smart cards you are using nowadays, that is ferroelectric memories, right, that is called non-volatile memory. So what is, for example, what is the important application for medical? So just now we just had an application regarding the what you can say WhatsApp and so on. That is the normal what you can say the usage message, your information sender, WhatsApp, Facebook, right? Whatever you want to send, you can just send by this particular apps. So now how this can be ferroelectric memories can be used to know your medical history. So by using the smart cards, the doctor, right, a particular concerned doctor will know the previous history of your medical history. The previous medical history can also be known by using this ferroelectric memories. So now that is two examples, two important examples that actually we are using in our daily life. That is the reason that we are studying about this ferroelectric materials. Again, there is a huge numerous number of applications, not only your WhatsApp or Facebook, and also the medical history. There is another the microwave devices. So for microwave devices, mobile communication also we take this here. Your cell phones, GPS system, Bluetooth and LAN for different carrier frequency bandwidth. So for this particular important integrated microwave components also, we'll just use this ferroelectric materials, right. So now, so this is the what you can say. This is your main important ferroelectric materials, and again we had an example of this. See, all the ferroelectric materials are piezoelectric, but piezoelectric materials are not ferroelectric. This is only for your understanding purpose, right. So now, what you can say, if there is any questions, that will be answered, right. In the later section, we'll just start answering your questions, right. So now, this particular aspect, I think that you are very clear with the ferroelectrics, what is actually the meaning of ferroelectric and why we are studying about polarization. We started with the polarization, and when you start with the polarization, so what are the types of polarization we studied? Electronic, ionic, orientation, and the what you can say the interfacial polarization. And the next aspect that we discuss about the expression of the ferroelectricity, expression of the electronic polarization, and then we just studied about the ferroelectric material, and the barium titanate is one of the example of the ferroelectric material. So the barium titanate structure, he can ask you in the examination, you can just find it in the notes that what is actually barium BaTiO3. deals with and what are the structure of that particular barium titanate. That is an example of a ferroelectric material, right. So, we need to understand barium titanate to know the exact nature of the particular material. So, that is what we have for today's for ferroelectric material, and then we just what we can do is that we just go to the next important aspect, that is the derivation part, right. We will just do for derivation part. Okay. So, what is that derivation we deal with in the for examination? He will ask you the one important derivation, determine the dielectric constant. See, he will ask you determine, this will be the question, we deal with this particular aspect now. So, determine the dielectric constant just now we just had a discussion regarding dielectric constant. So, if the dielectric constant formula is known, we can just know that how much the amount of potential we can store, the material, the dielectric material can store. So, for that reason we are actually determining the dielectric constant by there are different methods, right. So, in the syllabus you are having shearing, what you can say, shearing bridge method. This is the particular method which is applied, right, to calculate the dielectric constants, right. So, this is the method that we are applying, right, to calculate the dielectric constant. So, what is this method is all about? So, we will just deal with the first of all the diagram. When you see this diagram, right, diagram is essential. So, we will just take a capacitor, Wheatstone bridge, it's like a Wheatstone bridge, right. It is a what you already done in your intermediate type of Wheatstone bridge, right. You will have a capacitor, right. You will have a capacitor. In Wheatstone bridge, you had completely resistors, right. If you remember the Wheatstone bridge, you had only the capacitor, and here you got a galvanometer. Here you will have a null detector. Same thing, right. Actually, what we discussed in the the intermediate, the same thing. Again, you will have a variable resistor, right, and here again you will have a resistor. I think that you got a very clear idea. So, only the difference is that you will find other than the resistor, you will find the capacitor, right. This is also the variable capacitor that we are using here. So, here first of all, this is a type of Wheatstone bridge. Now, first we will mark A, B, C, D, right. So, we will just say this is actually A, and this is what definitely this should be B, and this is what C, and this is D, right. So, what is our aim? Our aim is to calculate the dielectric constant of the given capacitor. See, what we are doing here is that we want to know how much the capacitor can store the potential, right. So, we want to calculate the general formula for it. So, that what actually we are doing with this, right. So, that is the reason that apart from the resistor, we are having the capacitor also. So, here from here what I am doing here, you can see you will have a high frequency oscillator. We will just say this is called HFO, high frequency oscillator, right. This is connected to high frequency octave. This should be dot, high frequency oscillator, right. So, now this is actually, this will be like this, symbol of this is high frequency oscillator. Now there are resistors here, and we just start with the ones, right. First we will start ones. This will be your R1 and this is be your C1. Then we will go to the 2. So, right, when you started, see we started anti-clockwise, right. That is R1 C1. So, when I start anti-clockwise, this will be your C2. I think that you got a very clear idea, right, C2, and here this is the pair, right, this is pair. So, therefore, this is a single, so we just write it down, this is as R3. Any problem with this? See, R1 C1 anti-clockwise we started, C2. So, now since it is a single, we just write it down, a single resistor R3. Here you will have a resistor, a combination of resistor and capacitor. Therefore, we will write here R4 and C4 here. See, I think that I should not have any problem with this. So now this is about the this is called shearing bridge apparatus. So by using this shearing bridge apparatus, we will calculate the capacitance of the given value. Now you can see this actually what is the dielectric constant? It is a measure to degree to which the medium can resist the flow of charges. So if the medium, how much the medium can resist the flow of charges, we say that is called actually the dielectric constant. So here what is actually, first of all we need to know what is C1 here, right. So what are the things which is there in the figure, we will just write it down first of all. C1, right, C1 is here capacitance whose capacitor whose capacitance is to be determined. So we started, I said that we started with the anti-clockwise direction. So C1 is the capacitor whose capacitance is to be determined, whose capacitance is to be determined. So we want to determine the capacitance, what is the capacity of the capacitor, that actually we need to determine. So we need to find out the C1 value, right, formula, a general formula we want to just recognize. So what is R1 here? You can see R1 is very near to C1. So R1 is the series resistance. Just say that the R1 is your series resistance. Write it down. Resistance, if you can just make a note of it in your running notes, right? Resistance, series resistance, R1 is your series resistance. You say these are in series, right? You can just see C1 and R1 is in series with each other. So C1, R1 is C1 and R1 is in series with each other. And what is C2 here? You can just see, where is C2? This is C2. So C2 is the standard capacitance, means it will have a standard value, right? A fixed value, right? Standard capacitance. Right. This is fixed value. So we say that this C2 is a standard capacitance. And what you can say, what is R3? What is R3 here? You can see R3 is there. After C2, we'll just go for R3. R3 is the non-inductive. We said this is actually, see, this is we say this is again we draw an arrow. So this is called non-inductive variable resistor here. Non-inductive, or we say non-inductive variable resistance. Non-inductive, or simply you just say that is called a variable resistor. Understood, everybody? C1 is a capacitor whose capacitance we have to determine by using the shearing bridge. R1 is in very series with each other. R1 is a series resistance, and we will have a derivation of it from which we can just calculate the C1 value. And what C2 is the standard fixed resistance. R3 here you can just see arrow mark is there. Arrow mark here signifies the what you can say variability of that particular element, right? So R1, R3 is the variable resistor, and now the next aspect is that C4, definitely your C4 is what? C4 is variable capacitor, right? Arrow mark is there, just write it down, variable capacitor. And here, what is remaining here? What is remaining? What is remaining? R3 is over. R4 is non-inductive. We say that R4 is non-inductive. R4 is here. R4 is non-inductive capacitance. R4 is non-inductive resistor. Sorry, non-inductive. Right. Just now we just had this non-inductive. So non-inductive, right? Inductive, right? I will write here. Non-inductive, right? Resistor. So everything you can just write down. C1 is there, R1, and what is remaining here? C2 is there. R3 R3 is there, R4 and C4 is already there. Now what we are doing here is that actually first what you have to do now in order to apply and what is there, D is the null detector, and this thing we have, D is called null detector. We say that is called null detector. Your bridge will be balanced when this will show the zero deflection, right? We'll say that is called null deflector. And HFO is a high frequency oscillator, high frequency oscillator, frequency oscillator. Now this is what actually the figure is all about. Now what we are actually doing, right? We want to calculate this value, right? We need to calculate the value of C1. So how we will calculate the value of C1? Now we know C1 can be calculated, calculated. So C1 value is calculated by inserting. How will calculate, right? Now what will they, now in order to calculate the value of C1, what is say that the null detector should be 0, and by varying this C4, right? So what we do is that what type of procedure we'll do for calculating the value of C1. So here the null detector should show 0. So how it will show 0 deflection? When you vary the C4, right? This can be calculated, C1 is calculated, and such that the null detector shows zero deflection, so shows null deflection, zero deflection, right? Such that the null detector shows zero deflection, and by varying C4. So now this can be null detector should show zero deflection, and by varying, how this showing the null deflection as zero deflection by varying this C4. Now this is what actually we'll do. Now see, right? First of all, we just calculate. Now this is the way that the figure is looking like. C1 is the capacitor whose capacitance is to be determined. R1 is the series resistance, right? C2 is the standard capacitance, and R3 is a non-inductive variable resistor, and C4 is the variable capacitor. R4 is non-inductive resistance, right? So D is null detector and HFO is the high frequency oscillator. C1 can be calculated such that the null detector shows zero deflection, and by varying the C4. And also that what we will do here is that by varying C4 and R3 inserting the dielectric inside C1. So what we do is that we just insert a dielectric at the C1, and we will just calculate all this thing. So by using the principle of your Wheatstone bridge, so your bridge will be balanced. So what is the condition of Wheatstone bridge? Actually P by Q is equal to R by S, right? This is actually the what you can say, principle of the Wheatstone bridge, right? Principle of Wheatstone bridge. This is the principle of Wheatstone bridge, right? So by using this particular principle, we'll calculate the value of C1. Now that is what we are actually finding out, right? So what is here P signifies here? Here you will find, see, P here means combination of right, C1 and R1. So the capacitance can be written, right? What is how the capacitance will be? We can write 1 by j omega C1, right? And R1 means they are in series plus R1. You see, you can just say P, right? So P is nothing but 1 by j omega C1. So how I have written j omega C1. This is the reactance value. The capacitive, we say that this is capacitive reactance. So the capacitive reactance which is possessed by C1, right? You can just see for this the BW. So 1 by j omega C1 plus R1. So P by Q. So what is Q here? So here Q signifies here R3, right? P 1 by j omega C1 plus R1 by R3 is equal to, now R is what here? See, you can just see what is R means here. See, here principle of Wheatstone bridge we are using, that is called C2. Where is C2? Right, 1 by j omega C2. When it is in the series, or when we write it in the series, we will write 1 by j omega will be there, capacitive reactance. So C2 value as it is we write, right? If you don't remember it, you can just write it down that whenever the thing which is there here, you can just see C1 is there, instead of C1 what you can write? 1 by j omega C1. Since it is in series, we write 1 by j omega C1. So this C1 is a combination of the resistor R1. So 1 by j omega C1 plus R1. 1 by j omega C1 plus R1 is there, divided by R3, which is equal to 1 by j omega C2. Now we can just see this 1 by j omega C2, and this is divided by, see, R. S is what? Combination. You can just see now here there is a combination of R4 and C4. You can see R4 and C4 is there. So we'll write it down here. R4 by 1 plus, since it is parallel to parallel, you can just see parallel. So when it is in parallel, so you are right like this, right? 1 plus j omega C4, again this will be remaining, and this will be R. Now this you have to remember, this is the thing that you need to remember here for whenever the combination of capacitance and resistor is there. Simple capacitor is there, and the combination of resistor and the resistance and the capacitor. So 1 by j omega C1 plus R1 by R3 is equal to 1 by j omega C2 divided by R4 by 1 plus j omega C4 R4. Now this is this R4 I have written as it is. So for parallel, what I have written? 1 R4 divided by, see, you can just see R4 divided by 1 plus j omega C4 R4. So by doing some simple mathematical calculation, what we can write here again, right? So what I can write here, simple mathematically, we multiply it. So what we will get? R1 plus 1 by j omega C1, right? Rewrite, I am just rewriting it, and this is be coming to be, you can say this, see, I have written, see, 1 by j omega C plus R1. So when by j omega C go to this side, so you will get this is right, common R1, so divided by R3, which is equal to, see, same thing you can just write it down, 1 by j omega C2 by R4 divided by 1 plus j omega C4 R4. See, I have just taken LCM here. Sorry, what I can tell here, R1 I have taken common here, not LCM. R1 if I take common here, so R1 as it is, it will be 1 plus j omega. This is 1 plus j, no, this is actually R1 plus 1 by j omega C R4 actually. This is what actually this is R1 by R3 is equal to 1 by j omega C2. You can just see this, how I have written this, right, as it is 1 by j omega C, 1 by j omega C plus this particular aspect as it is I have written here. Next one, what it will be? So R1 plus 1 by j omega C1, right, is equal to, right, here it will be your R4, you multiply it, right, R4 is equal to R3 into 1 plus j omega C4 R4 by, you can just see, divided by j omega C2. So now we just simplify it, what it will be? R1 R4 plus R4 by j omega C1 is equal to R3 divided by j omega C2 plus, you can just have just multiplied this, right? So R3 by, so R3 R4 C4 divided by C2, right? So now this is the what you can say value that I got, right, I can just erase this and just replace it, just a minute. Okay, so what will value will get for this? So what is value I will get here? I will just write it down. See that value, we will just write it down, that value here. So by equating 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 real and imaginary parts, by equating real and imaginary parts, we want this value, right? So we want this R1 is equal to R3 C4 by what will get if we equate it, imaginary part C2 and imaginary parts means J value, right? The coefficients of J, and C1 you will get R4 C2 divided by R3. Now this is actually what we want. Now C1 we got, C1 is equal to R4 C2 by R3. Now this is the value that we got, the C1 value. The C1 value we calculated, the C1 value that is called the shearing by shearing bridge apparatus by equating the real and imaginary parts. So we just calculated this. This again, see, if it does not understood this, again we'll just study this particular session where you can again I will just explain you in detail about this, right. So now with this we'll just come to the end of our class.